Good evening, everyone. I'm David Johnson of Transform Ed Consulting, and I might as well begin with a shout out for Transform Ed Consulting and a shout out for Educational Innovations 360 Degrees. Cassandra Williams is my dear colleague, and she and I collaborate on many things, and those are both our firms. And you see the list of the services we offer. Please feel free to call us. You can find us on LinkedIn or you can find us anywhere on the internet. And our guest tonight is Dr. Michelle Fennick. Hello, Dr. Michelle.
Hello, David. So glad to be with you this evening.
Now, you know what? It was so good the last time we had to do it again.
Awesome. I'm so excited.
So the title of our topic today is Leading with the Three C's: Communication, Credibility, and Culture, Part 2. Say a little bit about how it became Part 2.
We had such a robust conversation. I think we had 5 bullets, and we were so enveloped in our conversation that we just barely scratched the surface on those first 2 bullets. And so I'm excited to get a chance to do a deeper dive into some other components of the 3 C's. And I just can't wait to unpack.
Well, great. Let me read your bio in brief. Michelle Fennick, PhD, Field Supervisor, Lamar University, and CEO, Consult, Dr. Michelle, LLC, Houston, Texas, began her career in education over 30 years ago as a teaching assistant. She later became a teacher after earning a Bachelor of Science degree at the University of Houston, a non-traditional student who graduated cum laude. She earned a master's degree and a PhD in educational administration from Prairie View A&M and has served as education preparation program director, dissertation chair, and adjunct professor at Houston Baptist University. Dr. Fennick has authored and co-authored an extensive list of educational articles and has received numerous awards. She shares her expertise with others by facilitating workshops at public speaking events and by serving on a range of educational committees and boards. And one of the pieces that I read about you, people refer to you as a leader of leaders.
Beautiful.
How did you get that moniker?
I have been a school administrator for the majority of my career, and my career just kind of happened organically. It was starting off as a teaching assistant. Each position required more responsibility. And so I think I attribute being impactful to helping others to be successful. I've always say that my bucket filler is watching others succeed. I love getting a chance to coach individuals to become assistant principals, to be effective, and to love this work. So I love leadership. So much about leadership to me is being a servant. And I believe that from my heart. And I try to model that. And so that's been probably what people remember most about me if we have an encounter.
Well, you know, a question that we commonly hear now is, what's your why? So, Dr. Michelle, what's your why?
Oh, I love that question. My why is to pay it forward and make sure that others have access. That's my why. And I want to explain. I have been so blessed, David. I've had mentors throughout my career. And what I appreciate about those mentors is they were able to see things regarding my abilities that I wasn't able to see. I always tell teachers that sometimes for our students, it's not what they think, and it's not even what the teacher thinks. It's what they think the teacher thinks about them that compels them to be successful. And I've just been blessed all throughout my career as a teaching assistant. I had individuals who said, young lady, you are going to go to college. When I was a teacher, young lady, you are going to be an assistant principal. As an assistant principal, getting my end of year reviews, I can't wait for you to be a principal. And so they saw an ability that motivated me to do additional steps so that I could fulfill those things.
Well, that's great, Dr. Michelle. Well, our topic again is leading with the three C's: communication, credibility, and culture, part two. And we have three bullets we will try to get through
Yeah.
this evening. And there are strategies to strengthen school climate and culture, resilient and self reflective practitioner best practices, structures to ensure personal and professional accountability. Where shall we start, ma'am?
We can begin with the first bullet.
Okay, first bullet: strategies to strengthen school climate and structure. What's the first strategy that comes to mind?
So the first strategy that comes to mind is communication, and it's real communication. And so I chose those three C's: communication, credibility, and culture, because when I visit schools and if I hear, murmuring, a lot of that murmuring, when I drill down and unpack it and get to the root cause, it's either communication, someone may have lost credibility, which really hurts a leader, and culture. And so strategies to impact that are always closely linked to communication. And communication has to happen with being intentional. It can't just be top down. And so there has to be structures in place that allow leaders to truly hear from the stakeholders. And so meetings, all meetings, have to have a component of not just talking, not just having a newsletter, not just having a call out system or a robo system that sends out a voicemail, but how do we have two-way communication that is responded to?
Mhm.
Also meetings, parent
Dr.
meetings.
Michelle, I want to go back to
Go ahead.
something you said earlier. Root cause. I take it then you're very familiar with root cause analyses. Could you give us an example of how you've used that with your consulting work and with your advising work?
I don't want to oversimplify, but 5 whys to ask why. The parents aren't happy. Why? Well, they said that they don't like the after school program. Why? They said the students always get in trouble in the after school program. Why? Well, they're not being monitored. Why? And so you just keep asking the whys. Typically, by that fifth why, you begin to get to the root cause of what the real issue is. Perhaps the activities aren't engaging.
Mhm.
Perhaps the teachers are not aware of what the expectation is. Perhaps professional development is needed, but we do a deep dive with the 5 whys. And you just keep asking until you get to the bottom and what the actual issue is.
And see, there's a danger of not getting to the root cause and just treating the symptom, the superficial symptom, as opposed to the root cause. What have you seen in your experience and your observations?
You are so correct, David. If you don't go down to the root cause and you're reacting, then things just they get exacerbated. And so you have to get down to the root or it will not end. You will not ever have systemic change. And
Mhm.
so that has happened. I've gone to schools where you're literally with the radio, with a phone, and you are running like you're running a race, and everyone is exhausted. The principal is exhausted. The teachers are exhausted. The parents are exhausted because they're now doing triage because things have gotten so out of hand. And you have to stop for a moment amidst the chaos
Mhm.
and unpack why.
Now, can you give an example of root cause analyses, the 5 whys, 5 or 6 whys, where you uncovered that it was a communications issue at the root?
Oh wow, that's really good. So let me think of a really good one.
Mhm.
So I remember coaching someone who was an aspiring principal,
Mhm.
and the teachers all felt like the parents weren't responding and doing their part.
Mhm.
So I inquired, well, why do you feel that way? Well,
Yeah.
we try to schedule meetings and they don't come and they don't, show up. Well, why do you think that is? Well, we send everything out and they don't let us, they don't respond. Has anyone inquired as to why they're not responding? Well, we sent out an email. Has anyone tried to call? Has anyone stopped perhaps when they're picking students up? And so I remember there was a particular teacher, and she would wait after school, dismissal line, and just how impactful that was. Communication. She was able to interact with those parents during the pickup line. That was the way that they could interact. But it was intentional,
Hmm.
and it required hearing from those parents,
Hmm.
and then they could develop a plan. And so, with that aspiring principal, we continue to unpack those whys and discuss different reasons for why the response had been like they were experiencing. And so
Hmm.
they were able to come up with a plan to truly engage the parents so that they could begin to have a dialogue.
Hmm.
Because the non-communication was causing the teachers to feel as if that there was a response that the parents that was not consistent with the heart of the parents.
Hmm. Oh, wow. Thank you very much, Dr. Michelle. I'm going back to the bullet strategies to strengthen school climate. In my readings, we differentiate between school climate and we differentiate school climate from school culture. How
Yes.
do you differentiate the two? What's the
I
difference? What's
I
one? What's the
love
other?
this. I love this question. So culture is how we do things. For instance, I don't know if you can see, but this is I have a Christmas tree up. This is my living room. It's pretty pristine in here. And
Mhm.
so culturally, or at least in my family, the living room is the place that is nice and pristine. It's where you might meet with a guest to have a meeting. We have the Christmas tree up. We put it up after Thanksgiving. And so that's what we do culturally. Climate would be how it feels. And so when I share with school leaders that I you can feel, it's a feeling. One of the things that I was very blessed to do is start off as a teaching assistant, and that principal put me in the office. He said, Michelle, I want you to be my front office registrar. So I had to greet every single parent, and his expectation was that I stand when they open the door and say, welcome to this elementary school. We're so happy that you're here. It was warm. They had a sense of being seen. It's how they felt, how you feel. Just like the climate outside. I'm here in Houston, and it's cool outside. And during the summer, it's 3-digit degrees. It's hot. It's how it feels. I visited a campus just yesterday, and I told her, I said, your facility is an after school facility. I said, the climate, I said, it feels amazing here. And she said, I'm very intentional. I want you to smile. I want to hear love in your voice. It's how you feel. So that's climate.
Mhm.
And that's my description of
Mhm.
climate.
So, what are strategies that strengthen both or either climate and culture?
There's another quote that I use: you inspect what you expect. And so that leader has to be vigilant and visible and continually inspecting. Sometimes it's just standing in the front office and just watching those interactions because that's the front line of the school.
Mhm.
How is my front office staff interacting with parents? How are people answering the phone? Are they smiling? How quickly are we getting to people? Do they know how to acknowledge one parent when they're interacting with one parent in the front? How are they able to de escalate? Do they have an area for that angry mom
Mhm.
that really is angry, that has a real issue that needs to be resolved? Is there an area for her to go in so that the front office is preserved?
Mhm.
How are students being spoken to?
Mhm.
How do we model that? How do we celebrate when we hear what we expect
Mhm.
that meshes with our climate?
Mhm.
What does language look like in our classrooms? How do we pose questions? What's the cafeteria look like? All of those things are continually inspected, and the principal and leadership team is giving feedback to
Mhm.
reinforce that the
Mhm.
appropriate climate is in place.
Now, Dr.
And
Michelle, you mentioned de-escalate.
yeah,
What are some strategies for de-escalating tense situations between parents and school officials?
so as a principal, and the emphasis on PAL, PAL, I believe that was probably one of my strengths is listen, give parents a chance to be heard. We don't always know what all is on their plate, and we are co-collaborators. We're not only the teacher, we're and then the parent, we're partners in this work with their child. And so I want to hear, and I want to hear all of it,
Hmm.
because as I'm listening, the parent is getting it all out.
Hmm.
I will reinforce and discuss, what's appropriate. I don't want to be berated and insulted with, expletives and a lot of derogatory language, but sometimes that does occur.
Hmm.
And then listen for those bullets. Like, what are
Hmm.
the trends?
Right.
Is it that you were trying to get to work, and as soon as you got to work, you got a call about Michelle
Hmm.
on Monday? And
Hmm.
then on Tuesday, you got the same call about Michelle at the same time. Then
Uh-huh.
on Wednesday, and now you're about to get fired. But it's
Uh-huh.
the same time every single day.
Hmm.
Well, there's a trend.
Hmm.
Michelle is acting up every single day. As soon as you leave, maybe we need to have a strategy in place for her to have support at that time.
Hmm.
And yes, you will be frustrated if you're about to lose your job
Now,
because of
Dr.
these
Michelle,
developments.
I'm sorry to keep interrupting, but you say
Yes.
good things, and I need to. I want to get to those good
Okay.
things. One of the things you said earlier, and I don't want to lose it: directing angry people to a room or somewhere other than the front office. What would be the strategy behind that? What would be the purpose or reason for doing such a thing?
I think it helps to protect them, their child. I think it helps to protect the school environment, and it keeps the environment feeling safe. And so when I was a registrar, a clerk at a school, we had a room that was right there, and so we could say, ma'am, let me get someone to help you, because you I can tell you need assistance right now. And they could go in that room, and they could even get a chance to cool off, and then someone would be willing to meet with them right away so they could get their issue resolved. But at least acknowledge that your issue is a serious issue that needs to be resolved. We have a special place set aside so that someone can hear what your issue is,
Mhm.
and then the entire environment is not disrupted.
Now, Dr. Michelle, I've seen techniques where people have said, could you come back tomorrow when you're in a better mood or when you're not as angry? What do you think of those approaches?
I've not seen that.
Uh,
I have had parents where the expletives are just flowing, and so I've
right,
said, now,
right. And the
parents,
berating, as you said earlier. Right,
I'm not using expletives.
right.
I'm a professional, and I want to help. So my expectation is for you to speak to me in an appropriate tone,
Hmm.
because I won't be able to continue this conversation.
Hmm.
So I have had those instances. However, when if there is an issue with their child, extend a lot of grace. I extend a lot of grace because I don't want to lose that parent. I
Hmm.
need them.
Hmm.
I need them on my side. I need them on the child's side. And we have to work together. So I work as hard to honor the parents as I do to honor the students.
Hmm. Let me go somewhere else with this.
Yes.
I speak with a lot of people, and some young, some older. And right now, I'm working with a young woman who is keeping all those things, all those experiences through the day and night and so on. In other words, how we talk about compartmentalize.
Yes.
She is not able to compartmentalize being berated and being assaulted, verbally assaulted by parents and so on. So what would be some techniques that an individual could use to maintain his or her bearing and and mental stability in the light of the kinds of abuse that some parents like to deliver to school officials.
And it can feel quite abusive. I had a very good uh, colleague that left the profession because she just it broke her. It was just too much. And so this is a technique. It's not, I'm not pulling from any research, but
Mhm.
there does come a point to where you have to understand that it's not you. So it's not Michelle. I'll just in when a parent is using profane language or screaming or even attempt to be violent with you.
Right.
It's not you. And so you have to find something within yourself to listen to what the real issue is. Now, in cases, things are, we're in a different world. So we do have to protect ourselves, of course.
Mhm.
We have to have a sense of wisdom, and
Mhm.
we can't put ourselves in harm's way. That won't benefit anyone.
Mhm.
However, to know to not get caught up in the whirlwind, I used to describe it, and I'm just be as transparent as possible. Sometimes it feels like a tornado. Tornado is going on. And what you can't do as the leader is jump in the tornado. You have to stay as global as you possibly can
Mhm.
and not take it personally.
Mhm.
And I know that it's not easy,
Yeah.
especially when it's your name
Yeah.
and there are people watching. It can
Yeah.
be very embarrassing. But then you have to know, and I say this also, to whom much is given, much is required. And so
Mhm.
when you are that leader, sometimes there are parents who had other experiences
Mhm.
and might even be objectional defiant.
And
And
all
you
those
are
experiences come to you
and they all
when they
come to you, and you have to know it's the title. I'm at a campus,
right.
I am the principal,
Right.
I am the person that they believe can absorb all of their pain and trauma
Right.
that they want to thrust and pour out. And so that helps somewhat. And then you
Mhm.
have to also have a strategy for rebuilding yourself when you've
Self-care.
absorbed that. You have to.
Dr. Michelle, we're gonna run out of time again.
I know.
And we're just on the first
But
bullet.
it's this is all so important and so
It
timely.
is so important,
So
isn't
timely.
it? Well, let me tell you, let me state what the next two bullets are: resilient and self-reflective practitioner best practices, structures to ensure personal and professional accountability. Of those two, which should we discuss now with the time we have
Let's do
remaining?
reflections.
Okay.
Reflection.
Hmm.
Mhm. So
Hmm.
I'm a huge proponent of being a self-reflective practitioner because we won't always hit the mark and get an A plus. And so it's about growing to me. I've been telling my students, when you're green, you're growing. When you're red, you're ripe. And we know what's on the other side of ripe. You begin to rot. And so when you have an experience, what were the good things that you can take away? What were the things that you can adjust? And if you view it that way, you're always on a trajectory of learning, of growing, of being able to share your experience so that perhaps someone else will have an easier experience. And so, and that's a lot of self-talk. That's taking the time to reflect on your day and you talk it out and say and consider what you could have done differently or another way to phrase it. And then you share it out so that the next incoming leaders can have the benefit of that experience.
Uh-huh. You mentioned self-talk. Um, Expand upon that. What is self-talk,
Self,
and
self,
what effect
self,
does it have on us?
self-talk. So self-talk is a way of just reflecting on what were the good things that occurred, what things that you need to adjust, and the things that you wonder about that you could have done differently. So it's just a way of reflecting. I
Mhm.
divide it into three components, and so it's what worked, what didn't work, what wonderings do I have.
Mhm.
And so
Well,
that's a way.
self-talk is very, very powerful in that it actually affects your sense of self. So, in which ways can someone self-talk and bolster sense of self?
What I have found too, David, is that there are so many individuals who berate themselves. They make a mistake and they think it's the end of the world. And unless, like my husband would always say, unless it's immoral, illegal, or unethical, you can come back. So, what did you learn from it? What did you learn from it? And to show yourself grace. I have teachers and administrators who show and extend grace to students and parents, but not themselves,
Mm,
who think that they need to leave the profession because they made an error.
hmm
It's we do have to be meticulous. We do have to operate in excellence. However, we're human and we work with human capital. So self talk should include what worked. I have people who will share their day or
hmm
share what they believe regarding their performance,
hmm
and it can be negative.
hmm
But what are you doing that's working?
hmm
And so that's you're right about that. It's edifying when you acknowledge and celebrate. There's so many who do not celebrate what they bring to this world of education.
You use the word grace. What would be an example of grace? Providing oneself grace.
So that young lady that you referenced that is feeling that she's exhausted or that she is having difficulty compartmentalizing some of the onslaught of the uh, verbal abuse. Grace would say, I feel this way because that's hurtful. I really care. I care about my campus. I care about my own family. I want to do a good job. And when I get berated like that, it's humiliating to me as a leader. That's real, and that's showing yourself grace. So because she may be in a position where she has to coach someone now through that.
hmm
And if she to get through it to the other side of what the lesson is for this, grace is going to be required.
hmm
It's going to have to take, you're already being berated. So why are you berating yourself?
Now, tie this with best practices. The bullet is resilient and self-reflective practitioner best practices. Tie best practices in with this.
So best practices would entail that we acknowledge that good so that we are strengthened to go on. That's the resilience, is that you have the grit to persist and not give up. If you get overwhelmed with that negativity, then we won't have you in the industry
Yeah.
to make contributions. So a best practice would entail. I even think about. I have a book here. Let me get it. Called the Impact Cycle, and in that you acknowledge all of the data that's observed. Is low inference data. Some of that data is good. That's a best practice. This is a tested strategy that you use with teachers. You wouldn't just go in and say, now your lesson plan wasn't aligned and your students weren't responding. I don't know where you got those questions from. You would acknowledge what you saw that worked. So
hmm
leaders need to do the same for themselves.
Wow. Well, I guess we can congratulate ourselves. We made it through 2 of 3 bullets
We
today.
did. We did.
So that means we need a part 3.
Yes.
Dr. Michelle, there's a lot to say. So if you could boil all this down to a takeaway, a summary, a simple takeaway, what would it be?
I would say to stay in the work
hmm
and to, again, grace and acknowledge what you bring to the table. There's so much need, and we are losing talent in droves. So find a resource that can pour into you, that can help you to fill your cup again. Figure out what those bucket fillers are in this work and lean into those experiences so that you're strong and you can persist
Mhm.
and be a force in the world of education.
Well, I guess that was your call to action too, but how about just simply articulating the call to action? What do you want people to do with this information, with this new knowledge?
So I want people to journal and acknowledge each day what their win is, where they did hit the mark.
Mhm.
Each day, I even call it a sunshine file. I keep a sunshine file in my email. When I get a good email, I save it. I keep them on my phone. I have an entire folder of thank you, Dr. Michelle. Thank you for spending time with me today. And when it gets rough, go to those sunshine files, go to that journal and remember the why. Remember why you're doing this work.
So we've said a lot of good things, and we can
Yes,
go on. And we need a part 3 here too.
absolutely.
If people want to contact you, how shall they do so?
If people want to contact me, please utilize my website, www.consultdrmichelle.com. They can also email me at consultdrmichelle@gmail.com, and I'll be more than happy to respond.
Well, it's been great having you as a guest. Second time around.
Awesome.
The
Thank you. I'm
second time
so
around is
glad.
better than the first, isn't
Good, good.
it? So maybe we'll have even a three for two. It's a pleasure speaking with you. And again, I need to give credit to my dear colleague, Cassandra Williams, who is the
Yes.
brains behind Educational Innovation 360 Degrees. Thank you all for attending tonight, and we look forward to seeing you next time.